Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions as we go out through this webinar, please just type them into your questions box on your screen, and we'll make sure to get those answered by the end. With that being said, I'm going to get over to Brent Cammett, who is the Director of Safety and Training Services at P3 Propane Safety.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules. I know this is a crazy time of year, so thank you for finding the time to come and join us here today. As she mentioned, my name is Brent Cammett. I'm with P3 Propane Safety. I'm the Director of Safety, Compliance, and Code-related issues, training, etc. And with us today, we're fortunate enough to have Walt. I'll let Walt introduce himself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Walt Jones with Gibson Oil and Gas Company. We are in Laurel Hill, North Carolina, right on the South Carolina border, about an hour and a half west of the coast, Wilmington there. We service about 18 counties in North Carolina and South Carolina, and we're fourth generation running the business. We've been in business since the late 40s. We've been working with P3 for about 4 years now, working both on the propane safety side and then also on the consumer focus side.
Nice. Well, thank you all for spending the time with us today. As I was mentioning, again, I'm going to do safety training, compliance, etc. I've been in the industry my entire career. We cover all 50 states in the United States and beyond. And of course, we do everything propane related. We always like to say we're your one-stop shop for anything propane related. And today we're going to talk about service plans. Well, what we've noticed overwhelmingly is that these service plans, and I'll get into a little more detail on what that is, have become very, very popular. Whenever we have a service plan customer, it tends to be a year after year type customer. And what that is it's a plan where you get to pick your number of days of training throughout the year. And of course, you get preferred scheduling, etc., preferred pricing, and of course, some extras that come along with it, which I'll get into in a little bit. But at the end of the day, we like to provide this package to our customers because any successful company has an ongoing training program. On-the-job training is fantastic. Certainly not saying anything negative about that, but there needs to be more, right? There needs to be things and avenues for updates, code changes, ways of doing things, etc. So that's what we do. We incorporate that in that training program, and of course, it can do a whole multitude of things as it pertains to the business's needs. When we think training, we always just think classroom environment, and it can certainly be that, but it can also be a lot more. It can be specialized training. Lately, a lot of them have been DOT audits or compliance assessments on how your propane company is doing. They can also be ride-alongs with delivery drivers, service technicians, specialized training around things that unfortunately often go by the wayside, such as cathodic protection testing, what that process is. And it's funny to me because when I teach a class, I have the students introduce themselves and I ask them, how long have you been in the industry, and or how long have you been with a certain company? And the number one reason why an employee moves on is because lack of training. They want more than just that on-the-job training. They want to further their careers. They want to learn more. No one wants to do the same job every day, all day, over and over and over for 40 years. So of course they want to expand that horizons. And the good thing about this is I've seen it happen many times where you have somebody in that role and maybe they were taught by somebody who didn't have something 100% correct. Now we're passing on bad information or information that has changed, which of course is not good, right? We want to make sure our employees are our frontline defense, if you will, against everything liability and terrible things happening. We have a lot of customers, of course, that are in dual fuel. And I always say, whenever that happens, I always say, when things go bad in oil, it's an expensive, hazardous material nightmare. When things go bad in propane, unfortunately, people tend to die. And of course, it's usually human error. Something took place that wasn't the way it was supposed to be, or something changed, or misinformation, or something of that case, or in that protocol, and that's where the training comes in, right? That consistent approach to the way they perform certain tasks. For example, a leak check, right? If there's one thing our employees should understand, it's that leak check and how that should be conducted, and they should all know this, whether they perform that task on the regular or just once in a while. That is super important, and I always say that your employees need to speak the same language. We've done a very good job in the propane industry of giving everything 5 different names. And of course, that's not good when it comes to the frontline employees. They need to understand what they're doing, what it's called, how it's maintained. So when I say service plan, of course, that's going to cover all of that stuff, right? And that's the beauty of it. You can use it not just for the mandated state requirements or federal requirements, but you can also customize it to what your company needs, which we get a lot of return visits for that. Excuse me. And then again, that consistent approach to the technicians and drivers. And it's funny because our industry is changing, right? It's very hard to retain employees. I can honestly tell you that there's probably not a company that me and my team work for that they don't ask the question when we're on site, do you know any technicians or drivers looking for jobs? And of course, the answer is usually no. Unfortunately, we have a massive shortage, and one way that we can build that pool of qualified individuals is by doing an ongoing service plan every single year. Every company has a best industry practice, and of course, we're all going to benefit from that if we do that. And then the other thing is the new info that comes out, you know, the code updates, all that kind of stuff. All of that stuff's coming out, and it's funny because we all know of what I'm going to call propane legends, bad ways of doing things, old ways of doing things that I'm sure we all have ideas or stories to tell. But the point is, those things are what we call, you know, mistakes or errors for a reason, because something bad came out of that. It may have been the way of doing business in the past, but it certainly isn't the way of doing business today. But yet it's overwhelming how often I go to somewhere and I hear that they're still performing those things that same old-fashioned way. So as in a nutshell, we can do better, right? All you have to do is go for a ride and look around at your propane installs. And this is every company out there. You're going to have those installs that, quite honestly, should keep you up at night. Well, we get pigeonholed in the office. We don't always see what's happening in the field. And of course, we want to identify that our employees are identifying this and know how to correct it, more importantly, which is where that training comes in. The other benefit to having well-rounded employees is, you know, your drivers should be almost as responsible as your service technicians when it comes to identifying problems or deficiencies in the field. So of course, that ongoing training for them is going to help that. And it's amazing to me, simple things like a bobtail delivery driver, been delivering propane for 6 years, and they don't know how their truck operates. They drive it every day, they pump fuel with it, but they don't know the inner workings. They don't understand certain processes of it. And of course, that should be second nature. If God forbid an emergency happens, they should understand what that truck is, how it operates, how all the safety devices work, even such as meter creep, right? The DOT requires all your employees, all your bobtails, to have a meter creep done once a month. And I can't tell you how often it is that we see bobtail drivers that have never done one or do not know how the process is conducted. So there again, that's where all of this stuff can come into play. And let's face it, right now in January, you probably don't know what you want for training through the training season, which is usually April to October. Well, that's another beauty of having a service plan. You're going to have active conversations with us and our team here at P3. And of course, we can help you with those decisions. We can help you with the required trainings, such as DOT Hazmat HM126, which is required within 90 days of employment and every 3 years concurrent, or every time a job function changes. So we can help you with that, remind you of that, but also those customized trainings, as I mentioned a little while ago. And the advantages to the service plans is, as a service plan customer, you get scheduling priority. Once again, someone on our team is going to be reaching out to you on a regular basis to get those things scheduled. So you don't call us up in July and say, hey, I'd love you to have you here next week, right? Probably not going to happen with any training class in the whole entire industry, but I get it. We get busy. Today's a good example of that. Where I'm standing is super cold, and I'm sure all of my fuel dealers are really, really busy, and they're not thinking about that. So it's nice to have that helping hand. We also provide support that comes along with that plan. So up to 4 hours a month of phone, text, email, cell phone calls, etc. I get calls all the time from service technicians and or delivery drivers in the field that they're doing an install or something and they're not quite sure of how to do something. Sure, FaceTime me, let's talk about it. Let's look at the problem and let's come up with the answer. Same thing with diagnostics, something going wrong with a heating system or whatever the case may be. That happens quite often with these service plan customers. So by all means, you know, that's what it's there for. We recommend you use it. We hope you use it. And in closing, I want to kick it over to Walt so he can explain to us. He's been a service plan customer for quite some time now. He's dealt with one of my other counterparts here in the safety department, Paul Craver. I don't know if any of them listening is familiar with Paul, but I'll kick it to you, Walt, to tell us about your experience with these service plans with us here at P3.
Yeah, you bet, Brent. So the bundle has been very, very valuable to us. We've had P3 team member down each year during the summer months, 4 or 5 days, and that's included ride-alongs with our service teams for installations, inspecting installations, and then ride-alongs with our bobtail drivers as well. And that in-person visit is super important to us because we want there to be a relationship between the P3 team and our team, so that when they do run into something, they'll pick up the phone and call, or they'll text and reach out, and that happens every week from our team. So we're spread out over 18 counties, and folks in all directions, and so having that instant contact is super valuable to us. And then two, it gives the P3 team an opportunity to see where our weaknesses exist, frankly. And then we can supplement our training in-house based on those observations. And we've been in business for a long time, and most of our employees have been with us for a long time. And like Brent said, just because we've done something forever doesn't mean it's right. And so we want that exposed so that we can train to it. And then one thing we've done, and I don't know it's necessarily being discussed today, but we've asked P3 to handle our monthly safety training meetings so that it can further support what we may be training on internally, go back and revisit issues or items that they trained to when they were on site with us. And it runs the gamut, everything from cathodic protection to leak checks to, planning out an installation. Just been tremendously valuable to us and to me. So I've been around the business for about 20 years, but I've only been in the business for about 7. And so just having that extra set of eyes is huge for us. So, and like I said too, it's not only service technicians, but it's the bobtail drivers as well. Tremendous value.
Yeah, Walt, you bring up a good point. Something we normally think of, but take for granted. But you're absolutely right. When we're in the organization, like anything in life, we get complacent. Complacent because we're looking at the same thing every day. And it's always sometimes nice to have that foreign set of eyes to come in and recognize the deficiencies or the problems. And again, delivery drivers, that recurrent training, or service technicians, they deliver to that same house, every single year. However many deliveries a year, yet they don't notice the obvious staring them in the face. And the other thing too that I always like to talk to people about when it comes to training is we all know that what happens in the training environment can go one of 2 ways. And we spend a lot of time on this, me and my team, to make sure that that's not the outcome of the training. It's either going to be we're going to continue to ignore everything and keep doing business the way we have been, or we're going to become the safety police, and now I can't. And I'm a firm believer that when everything's a priority, nothing is a priority. So of course, we spend a lot of time with your employees making sure they understand that difference, because let's face it, our whole industry would be better off if we attack the 3 worst things we see in a week and we keep moving forward, right? We'd all be better off for it. We'd certainly see less catastrophic events on the news, or even non-catastrophic events. Now, unfortunately, those don't usually make the national news, but there's plenty of them that happen year after year. So clearly we can do better as an industry. And when you look at those installs, when you're out and about, it's definitely an eye opener. Let me tell you, I've come across so many things that are, I'm going to refer to it as propane 101, things that, shouldn't be ever in a code issue. However, you're staring it in the face saying, how did this happen, right?
Yeah. And I've found too within our organization that our team will more often ask questions to Paul or the P3 team than coming to me, with it, because they don't want to expose, a lack of knowledge or anything like that to me. So we have found that to be very valuable to us, just having that, to where our guys are not winging it. They're actually going to the experts on it.
Right.
So.
It's funny too, because I'm sorry, go ahead, Walt.
Well, I was just going to say too, enforcing, our team hearing repeated the same things that we're encouraging, in-house in our training and reiteration of things. They're hearing that again from Paul. But then also the documentation piece, which is so important, because if it's not being documented, it's not happening, right? So, so encouraging the guys to be diligent in their documentation. If you've got an out of gas call, for instance, with our drivers, or if you're doing the safety inspection on the front end with the service team.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Over the years and years that I've been doing this, I've always noticed that technicians have one of two things in their cell phone, and it's going to be either the picture of an install that they're proud of, that came out very nice, that was neat and organized, etc., or more commonly, those nightmares that they came across. Can you believe this? Well, obviously, we want to document the beautiful installations, the code compliant installations. Not only do they benefit your organization and the employee, obviously we're going to have less incidents out there in the industry because of that. And the other thing that we often go into when we're doing trainings that a lot of people don't think of is best industry practice. If I had a nickel for every time a technician said to me, well, the code's black and white, and I always say, well, what code book are you reading? Because it's an entire sea of gray, right? It's very interpretive, depending on what you're looking at, what the code is, what the actual item is. Of course, it can be interpretive on how that is. So I like to speak to a lot of the best industry practices, which of course go way beyond what the code says. So of course, certain industry things, also new equipment, new materials that we can use in the business. That's another thing that we talk to them a lot about. Luckily, me and my team have a lot of exposure to that, dealing with all different kinds of companies in the industry, different geographic areas where they use different things, different size propane containers, you name it. But having the gamut of all 50 states, we come across quite a bit of stuff. So it's easy for us to select what is the what stands out to us as a good, solid first foot forward, as opposed to a lesser material or way of doing things. So I don't have anything else. I think we can, unless Walt, you have anything to add, we can turn it over to questions if that works for you.
Sure.
Perfect.
Do we have any more questions today?
Yeah, looks like we've had some come through. So I have some questions for Walt here. So why do you purchase a service plan on-site training days instead of some of the other industry options?
So having an expert on site with our guys for the reasons I mentioned, questions are going to come up during the inspection of that installation, with Paul standing right there with them. Paul's going to see things that he's going to want to bring to their attention, whereas if we're doing training, before we began working with P3, for instance, we had, written materials. We would have a monthly safety meeting. We would run through those. And then it was more, our team teaching our team on site. But having one of the P3 team members out in the field, looking at actual installations that we performed, asking the guys questions, not only to bring an issue to their attention, but also to make sure they understand the logic behind why we do what we do, we found to be invaluable and really, really important. I think Brent had mentioned, the bobtail drivers not understanding the parts and functions of the truck. Likewise with the service team, it's so important understanding how that, how those regulators work, why flow and lockup are important. I think things like that, and the guys, when they're on site with the team, they can really drill down into that. And if they sense too, Paul will sense this particular driver is not really getting it, then he can spend some extra time with that, driver either on site or virtually later.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. It's often, not realized what's happening in your own organization, meaning they may not listen to that in-house person but they see a new face and all of a sudden, and then there's always the other side to that too, the challenges, right? They say, oh yeah, we've had trainers before, and then they want to test us, which for the record, me and my team love that. Bring it on, right? That's what we want to do. We want everyone to leave that with a little more knowledge. And that's a great way to do it. You know, some people are going to be receptive to the information. Some people are going to challenge you, but I can promise you at the end of the day, everyone's leaving with something that they weren't aware of previous to that class, which at the end of the day is the overall, you know, goal.
That's right. That's right.
Awesome.
Anything else?
So for Brent, how does the billing work, and do you offer different options?
Yeah, good question. So yes, there are different options. Often training dates are, we'll select the number of days and it'll either be 50% up front and then 50% after the training is completed, or a service plan. We do offer a monthly billing package. So for example, if it was going to start this month in January, we do allow customers to break that up over 6 months, 12 months. We're very flexible around that to help with the business needs. And also too, the days don't expire. So if you didn't get to them this year, for whatever reason, you know, business got crazy, they'll just roll over to the next year. Not a problem at all with us. We're very flexible around that, you know, with ample notice, obviously. But yeah, that's something that we're very flexible on. And I think that's also a reason why the service plan has been so popular. People know they can count on it, they can rely on it. And oftentimes they'll call me up and say, I know we've used, you know, 7 of our 8 training days, but I just realized I need 3 more. So we'll, again, being a service plan customer, we try to make them a priority and remind them of what's coming up. We'll remind them of the mandatory stuff like the DOT hazmat I mentioned. We'll be like, hey, you did it 3 years ago. It's coming up on your anniversary. And that's awful nice. You know, you folks out there in the trenches are very busy with everything else going on. So a helping hand is always a good thing.
Awesome. And does the service plan only offer limited scheduling dates or options? And is this service offered anywhere?
So yes, it is offered. Like I said, all 50 states we cover and beyond. We've actually been doing some work in out of the country on some of the islands. So that's perfectly fine. We're more than happy to do that. And then I'm sorry, what was the other part of that question?
Does the service plan only offer limited scheduling dates / options?
Oh, yes, sorry. So yeah, I mean, obviously it depends on the industry or what's happening, but yeah, that's why we try to get booking ahead of time. And again, remind our customers of what's coming up, who needs what, for that exact reason to help keep them on task. But no, it's the benefit is, of course, us essentially coming at you and saying, hey, what about this? What about this? To help that scheduling process within your organization. So there's no limit to it. We'll help you with in any way we can. We're very flexible. We've done all kinds of stuff. And the other thing too that often people don't understand about the on-site training, oftentimes they think it has to be some big production and an expensive thing where they have to rent a space, etc. That does not have to be the case at all. We have set up in church basements, garages, you name it. We are more than happy to get out there in the field with the employees, even if it is a classroom environment. Again, we'll set up in one of the bays of your garage or a basement or a conference room or whatever works for the business needs.
Awesome. And it looks like this would be our last question for Walt. So what was your favorite part of dealing with P3 in a service plan arrangement?
Well, Brent sort of alluded to this. It really allowed me to let the experts focus in on safety, and it's just a tremendous help to me. Keeping us on task. I want our guys growing each year that they're with us, feeling more and more comfortable, understanding the operation of the systems and things like that. But having boots on the ground, you really there's no better way to train your team than having an expert on the ground working with them, looking at real installations, talking through hypotheticals, but looking there, standing there looking at the system in operation and working through it together. There's no substitute for that.
I agree. Thank you, Walt.
You bet.
Anything else?
I think that would be it. You guys have anything else to add before we wrap up?
I don't, other than, if there's any questions or comments or concerns, please reach out to us. That's what me and my team are here for. We'd love to hear from you. And again, if you're not familiar with us, then let's set something up. We can even set a call to go over what your needs are, or even recommend an area on where that we should begin, right? Some type of a compliance assessment. And again, that doesn't have to be on site. That can be a call we can schedule and talk about what the needs are, or what you think you need versus what our opinions are, and work together to come to a resolution. Thanks everybody for having us today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm happy to share my experience offline with anyone as well.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Well, again, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Walt.
Yeah,
Have a
thank
great day,
you.
everybody.